Today, in Lesson 4.3, we are going to talk about comparing and ordering decimals. Yesterday, you were introduced to the base 10 blocks. Let's take a look at the following picture. Take a look at the base 10 blocks in the picture on your screen. On the left side, we have a cube. A cube is worth 1. To the right of the cube is 1 long. That long represents 10. It would take 10 longs to make the next base 10 block, which is the flat. The flat represents 100. In today's lesson, we are going to consider the flat to be the 1 or the whole. That means everything is going to be out of 100. On your whiteboard, you will be drawing base 10 blocks to show the following decimals. Remember that the flat is the whole, or 1. After you have drawn the decimals using base 10 blocks, I would like you to tell if they are greater, less than, or equal to one another. It is now time for you to solve the 4 problems on your whiteboard. Please leave them on your whiteboard for your teacher to look at as he or she circulates around the room. Go ahead and solve the 4 problems on the screen. Stop the video now. It is now time to go over the 4 problems. Problem number 1 says 0.6 compared to 0.4. 0.6 says 0 and 6 tenths. So I am going to draw 6 longs to show 6 tenths. 0.4 says 4 tenths. I'm going to represent that with 4 longs. 6 tenths compared to 4 tenths is greater. Therefore, my sign is opened to the 6 tenths. Let's go to number 2. Number 2 says 0 and 27 hundredths. The 7 goes out to the hundredths place. That tells me I have 2 longs and 7 cubes. .2 says 2 tenths. Remember, a long is worth 10, so I have 2 longs. You should have chosen 0 and 27 hundredths is greater than 2 longs. In problem 3, I have 1 and 50 hundredths. Remember that the flat is the 1 or the whole. That tells me I have 1 whole flat and 5 longs. If I compare it to my other number, it says I have 1 and 53 hundredths. I have 1 flat, 5 longs, and 3 cubes. 1 and 53 hundredths is larger. In problem 4, I have 2 and 4 tenths compared to 2 and 4 tenths. 2 and 4 tenths. Remember, the flat is the 1 or the whole. I have 2 flats and 4 longs to show 4 tenths. When I compare that to 2 and 4 tenths, that is 2 flats, that represents the whole, and 4 longs to represent the 4 tenths. 2 and 4 tenths is equal to 2 and 4 tenths. In your math journal, you will be comparing decimals by either drawing the base 10 blocks or looking at a picture of the base 10 blocks to compare or write the decimal. We are now going to move on to the topic of ordering decimals. We are now going to look at the process of ordering decimals. When it comes to ordering decimals, we are going to want to put them in order from smallest to largest. Let's take a look at problem 1 together. We have 4 decimals. Our first number is 0 and 3 hundredths. The second number is 0 and 3 tenths. The third number is 0 and 33 hundredths. And our fourth number is 3 and 3 tenths. We now need to take those 4 numbers and put them in order from smallest to largest. When we do that, we need to look at the number that is in the tenths place value first. The number that is the smallest in the tenths place value will be your smallest decimal. So in problem 1, our smallest decimal is 0.03. My next 2 decimals are 3 tenths and 33 hundredths. I know that 3 tenths means I have 3 longs, each of them worth 10, so I have 30 out of 100. I know that 3 tenths is going to be less than 33 hundredths, so my 3 tenths is first, followed by my 33 hundredths. My last decimal was 3 and 3 tenths. Whenever there is a whole number greater than 0 in the ones place value, that is going to be larger because I have a whole flat. 3 and 3 tenths means I have 3 flats and 3 longs, so I have 3 and 3 tenths or 3 and 33 hundredths. Here are my decimals for problem 1 in order from smallest to largest. I would like you on your whiteboard at this time to put problems 2 and 3 in order from smallest to largest. Stop the video and do that now. In problem 2, I notice that I have some large whole numbers that are to the left of the decimal. I have 4 and I have 40. I know that 40 is going to be the biggest whole number. So I'm going to start with my first 2 decimals that say 4 and 1/10 or 4 and 1/100th. Out of those 2, my 4 and 1/100th is the smallest, followed by 4 and 1/10. I now am going to look at my last 2 decimals, 40 and 1/10, which is the same as 40 whole flats and 1 long, which is worth 10, compared to 40 and 1/100th. Remember, the cube represents 1 out of 100, so I'd have 40 flats and 1 cube. I know that 40 and 1/100th would be smaller than 40 and 1/10. Let's take a look at number 3. You should have noticed that you have a couple zeros that hold the ones place value. So I need to look at those 2 decimals first. I need to look at 0 and 7/8 and 0 and 61 hundredths. I know that 61 hundredths is less than 78 hundredths. So 0.61 is my smallest decimal, followed by 0.78, followed by 1 and 6/8, 68 hundredths, followed by 6 and 71 hundredths. The process of ordering decimals is where we put them in order from smallest to largest. It's important that you look at what number occupies the ones place value. If it is always a 0, you need to now go and look at the tenths place value. The smaller the number is in the tenths, the smaller the decimal is. You will be ordering decimals in part of today's lesson in your math journal.